Well, welcome to Let's Go Live with Gigi Myra, and I have with me young adult mother duo team, writing team, Janice and Leslie. Welcome, you guys, you lovely ladies.
Hi, thank you.
Um, so I know we had talked earlier, me and you, Leslie, and that didn't work out. So we're going to start from the top, and now that we have your mama, it'll be all the better.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
You guys are too cute. Okay, so you write young adult, and that can mean a lot of things. So it's kind of like a really broad umbrella, like fantasy is, romance is. So what does that mean? Where's the line on young adult for your books?
We're classified as YA fantasy, but there's definitely romance in there as well.
Like a little thread of it.
Yeah, it's not.
Oh, it's not a little thread.
Well, the first book is.
No, it's not a little thread at all. If you think about it, because
Yeah.
the main push of the character is that she's finding out about her destiny, and by doing so, she ends up dating a guy who is part of said destiny. So the magic and the romance is intertwined for sure. It's not a mini part at all.
It plays a significant part throughout the book. It's her first foray into all of those teenage things. First love, finding out about herself, trying to figure out what's going on in her life. So yeah, this is part of it.
Yeah.
So YA, there's no profanity. And on the romance, does it get up to like kissing, or where's the line?
So there is kissing for sure in this book. We didn't want to portray anything super spicy because this is intended for teens. And while, everybody here's an adult and we've all read spicy books, so to speak, it didn't feel right for the character. That's not to say that if we had a character that was a YA character and she was a different type of character, we wouldn't push that line. But for this character, it wasn't appropriate. So we do discuss her having sex, but we don't have her have sex in the book.
Oh, okay. So that's interesting, because I know that some readers, well, I guess, again, it's a wide category, right? And so YA can mean a lot of things, anywhere from 13 to 18 and then 18 and a little up, right? And so it is always interesting to find where, how you guys merge your story in, where's the line, what is the right, what is the wrong. I find that fascinating because it's hard, right? So sometimes when you're writing, you're like, oh my gosh, it just dovetails into something naturally, and you're like, let me back this scene up.
Yeah, fade to black.
Yeah.
Actually, in our third book, we do push that limit a little bit, and we had to reach out to the publisher to make sure that where our line was allowed to be for a YA fantasy. And they were like, here's how we set up the standard. They gave us this really great list, and it was like, G, there's like hand holding, PG, some kissing, and then I think it was like PG-13, there's some kissing, there's the implication that something's going to happen. I think the female takes off her shirt and then it fades to black. And they were like, that's kind of the line you got to stay by if you're going to go spicy in a teen book.
Well, see, that's interesting, because for those that are watching and that they are YA readers or authors, I mean, it's really cool that you guys have a list from your traditional publisher. Like, here's where you can't cross.
It made it easy to know where we could go. And since it's a trilogy, we know how far we can go in each book. There's a natural progression, but we know where to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's good because, it gets to be complicated, right? I mean, that with the story you want to tell, sometimes our characters kind of like go off stage, they do their own thing. You're like, wait. Where's everyone's hands? Hands where I can see them, guys.
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, not in the third book. The third book, we definitely push the limit. There's a little bit. So if you read a lot of YA fantasy, and if the character is mature enough, and they're not, like 12 years old, they're going to have some kind of experience like that. And it's always written very subtly. You know, like she's excited to be with him. You know, he takes off his shirt, he runs his hands down her body. She has these feelings. You know, he does something, it makes her gasp, kind of stuff. And if you don't know what you're looking for, you almost kind of miss what happened. And so we had to kind of toe the line in the third book when something like that happens, you know. And I remember, you know, we discussed it and we knew what was going to happen. But I wrote the scene and Mom read it and she was like, "Good job."
Yeah, it was done very well.
Because I was nervous that I wasn't going to be able to keep it cloaked, if you will, for those who read it but can't, you know, it might go over their head a little.
Yeah, you don't want to be too explicit.
Oh no, I mean, again, for your audience. So
Yeah.
let's start at the very top. This is a trilogy, you had said.
Yes.
And tell us about the story. It can be broken up by, you know, each individual book or the overall theme of it, wherever you want to start.
So our series is called the Amulet series, and the first book is called Breed Reborn. That came out in February of this year. Our second book is called Breed Redefined, and that comes out October 15th of this year. So there's not a lot of waiting period between the books, which is kind of nice, especially for a reader. If you read a book and you like it, you don't want to wait that whole year for the second one or the next one to come out.
Exactly.
Our main character is named Bridget. She's a Jersey girl who discovers that she's a descendant of a Scottish weather goddess, and that goddess has a twin. And now these twin sisters were controlling the weather using an amulet, but over the time that amulet was broken in half and those pieces were lost. So now every generation there's born a Cúdachar, which is Gaelic for seeker, and that particular person is like the chosen one, and they have to go and try to find these pieces. The fear is that if one side of the family will get the pieces and reunite them, they'll control everything and plunge everybody into winter. Mm-hmm. And then the other side of the family, once they reunite, if they get it and reunite the pieces, they want the weather to go back to normal. You know, 4 seasons in global warming is not a thing. So our first book, our main character Bridget, she's introduced to all of this. It's very much like a setting up book, if that needs to be, because she just kind of like going through life and going through school, and then like bam, she finds out this is happening to her. The second book, it's a little bit more about how she learns to control what she has and her powers and kind of navigate this new world that she's been introduced to. And then the third book is the culmination of all of this. And will she find the extra, will she find the amulet pieces? Will the other side find the amulet pieces? And there going to be a giant fight and things like that. That's currently work in progress though, so I can't reveal too much.
Yeah, no spoilers. Okay.
No spoilers for sure.
Okay. You know, I have a million questions. So she is a normal human, and then does she discover she has powers, or something happens and all of a sudden, or did she know about them all along?
No, she didn't know about them all along. There have been, in the first book, there's a little bit of an indication things happen around her. Mom knows, but she wanted her to have a normal upbringing, if you will.
Yep.
So she doesn't tell her. So here things are happening, and some of the other people, the other characters, realize what's happening. She doesn't, and then all of a sudden it all comes together, and she's like, "What? Huh?" You know. So it's a reveal for both the reader and the character at the same time.
I love this because sometimes I don't want to be, oh gosh, is it, I can't think of what the word is now. It escapes me. Omniscient, omnipresent. Anyway, where, you know, you're the viewpoint of the author, and so you know everything that's just happening to the character. I prefer, and I think a lot of people do, where it unfolds and you discover as they discover. Because then it has so many much more twists and turn to it. And to me, as an author, it really gives you guys a lot more leeway to just throw more twists and curves and unexpected things.
Yep. And that's what we're doing in book 2 and in book 3. Book 2 has the biggest reveal, biggest cliffhanger at the end. a lot of the stuff that happens in the first book kind of wraps up a little bit in the second book, and you get to see, you know, where certain things were coming from or why certain things were happening. You know, she travels in the second book, which is kind of nice. So you get a whole different viewpoint. There's just a lot of, I just felt like in the second book we could have a little bit more fun with it because we didn't have to spend more time world building or even creating like what was going on. Now she is established and we can play around with that. So that's what we were doing for the second book a lot more.
Yeah, she's coming into her own. She's coming into her power. She's coming into her own. She's beginning to realize what her job is or what her future is going to hold. You know, so she begins to realize all of this and work towards it.
Well, and I think, isn't it fun when your characters do get to travel because then they're on their own. The discoveries are deeper. It's more like sensory, right? Because you don't have, if her mom knew all along and everyone's around her knew, that, you know, it's not so shock and awe, but when it's only her out in the world discovering everything fresh, I just think it has to be more fun to read and write.
It is a lot of fun to write. She goes to Edelboden in Switzerland in the second book, and I went there when I was 18. So it was nice to be able to write from an 18-year-old's perspective and remember that. And I made sure that she had that same kind of fresh experience that I had as much as I possibly could. So she does experience a lot of Swiss-related items. You know, she goes on a hike to a lot of the nice, the gorges that they have there and around the rivers and stuff like that. And there's a lot of, she's engaging in all the food. Food is very important to our character, like it is to us. We're big bakers, we like to eat. So we made sure that our character represented that and reflected in her. So you hear a lot about how she's training and she's like, this is what I'm having for breakfast all the time. It's not tedious. It's just sort of like these little spots where you get to experience Switzerland through her eyes, and she references things that are similar to what she's had at home. So it's sort of like journeying with her through her first experience in Europe.
Okay, so I have a friend who's in Geneva as we speak. He's running the marathon, and he's like, I think I need to move here. And I hear that anytime someone travels to Switzerland because it's just stunning. But is her story modern day? Because, you know, fantasy does get into, you know, where it could be like your own setting, or it could be like Switzerland, the future, or Switzerland or historical.
Yeah.
Now this is present day.
Yeah, we did not want her to deal with like, oh no, I need help, but how do I call somebody? Yeah. So we felt like
adding technology.
And we felt like adding in the modernization and people who have to be on the run or off the grid, it's kind of hard. So we did apply that, especially to the second and third books, a little bit more and put a little bit more pressure on that. Because if she is on the run or she is trying to find something and she doesn't want to be followed by the other side, now she has to, as a teen, she has to get away from all social media that track her. She has to turn off the geo tracker on her phone and locations and all that kind of stuff. So that added its own level of challenges. Kind of similar how a writer who is going to world build in ancient times where there's no indoor plumbing and none of this technology, they have their own challenges.
Oh no, I think history or historical fiction or any kind of historical writing, fantasy fiction, romance, whew, it is tough because it's a whole different language. What they use, you know, their word choices, and then the fashion, and I mean, all of it, the whole life.
So all of that plays into it. We didn't have to deal with that.
And I know we can. I know we can Google everything, and I'm like, no thanks. It's already hard enough to write a good story.
Yeah. And you have to rely on like mages and like wise women of the villages and things like that. And they're always on the top of a mountain somewhere. And, you know, there's like a 3-day trek to get to them. We didn't really have that kind of issue, thankfully.
Okay, so the second book, is it done? I know you said that it releases in October.
It's done.
Oh my
It's done.
gosh.
If you look at my socials, I released the pre-order link and the cover reveal.
Well, congratulations. So I think we talked about this before. I know that, well, why don't you explain how you guys work before we get into betas or alphas or arcs?
Go ahead. It's your favorite thing to answer.
She writes the book, and then I'll read what she'll tell me. You can read it now because I've finished whatever she's finished, and I'll read it, and then if I'll have a question or I have a comment, and then we discuss it, and then sometimes it gets changed, sometimes it doesn't, because I'm not 17, 18 years old, and she's closer to that age. So we have a different perspective on how things should go.
Well, to play off of that, to clarify something, we do discuss plot lines ahead of time, though. So she already has an idea of what I'm writing, but I'm sure you know, Gigi, as an author, your characters kind of tell you where they want to go and what they want to do and what they want to say. So a lot of times I'll try to write as much as we want, or as much as we discuss. But if my character is telling me that's not what's going to be fitting for her, then I'll go back to mom and I'll be like, yeah, so you know how we said we were going to do this with this character? And she'll say, yeah. And I'll be like, okay, so it didn't really feel right for her, and this is why, and I wrote it this way. And she'll be like, okay. And then she'll read it and be like, that doesn't really work, or that does work. Like in the first book, there was a kissing scene, and it was supposed to be really uncomfortable and awkward. And I wrote it so awkward that my mom was like, I don't have secondhand embarrassment. It's like first, second, third, and fourth-hand embarrassment. It was so bad. She was like, you got to tone that down. I was like, okay. So that's kind of how we operate with our writing process.
I don't know, mad respect for that, because sometimes what we intend to do, we can't do. And writing awkward is very hard.
Apparently not. For me.
She does real well with it.
You're like, nailed it. Yeah. I can do awkward.
I remember teenage awkward like it was yesterday.
So how do you, co-writing teams are fascinating to me. I marvel at how, two people can kind of have the same story. I think you guys, the way you broke it up is pretty genius, because it's not like one writes one chapter and one writes another. And you do see that a lot in co-writing. However, how do you guys get through disputes? Like if you really, because if you see, I feel like writing is 1,000 decisions. And like you said, characters go off script. All of a sudden they're like, they start kissing. You're like, hey, no, we're not doing that now.
It's true though. So, it's very true.
And so you make a million choices as you're going and writing through the scene.
Well, as you said, we discuss how we want the character to go, what they should be doing. And then, like you said, she starts writing and all of a sudden the character is going left or right instead of the straight line. And then she'll say, the character went this way because I thought it was a little better, or this is the way it made sense. And then I'll read it and we'll discuss it again. If it works, I say, fine, it's okay. How are we going to pull in this person for this scene or that kind of thing? And then we'll discuss it some more. And then she'll write again and I'll read it again.
Or I'll go back and edit
it. You'll go back and do rewrites.
Yeah.
Rewrites are not the worst thing, because I always see it as at least something is there to rewrite. I don't have to write fresh, which sometimes can be challenging, especially if you have writer's block. But if it's already existing on the page, it makes it so much easier for me. Like I enjoy editing. I look forward to giving it to our editor, and when she gives it back to us, I'm like, okay. I'm taking off from everything. No one talked to me for a week. I'm getting this done. And my mom's like, well, can I be part? I'm like, no, I need this. This is my thing. I love the editing.
You can read it after I finish.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I love the editing.
Gosh, girl. Oh, you're a special kind of June bug, because you're the only person I've talked to who's like, I love editing and I love rewrites, and all of us are like, oh.
Oh, I do, because I feel like our editor, Alexa, she's so great. She challenges us. Mm-hmm. She'll look at something and be like, make that better. And I'll be like, okay, what do you mean? She won't leave it that vague. But she like in our second book, Bridget goes to Adelboden and she goes to the Danube Academy. We call it the Academy throughout the whole thing. And at one point, there's other people there and things like that. And our editor pointed out, she was like, great, you focus a lot on her, that's great, but there's no depth to the school. Like what's going on around outside of her classes. And I was like, oh, that's a good point. And so you know, she forced us to rewrite it. And then there's a scene where Bridget turns 18 and she gets her full powers. And again, these are not spoilers. It's just how the plot line goes. And I was showing how I determined it to feel if, you know, you were just imbued with all of these goddess powers. And Alexa came back with like, okay, I see what you're saying, but it's a little too hard to grasp as a concept. Try in this capacity, in this way. And then I actually, you know, we rewrote everything. We sent it back to her. She edited more things, but she came back to those things that I fixed, and she was like, good fixes. Like, this is what this works better for your story. I see it, I feel. And, you know, we would read it 1,001 times. Like, we know what the book is about. And after hearing her, her suggestions and we corrected them, we both would be like, yes. It was like that last piece, like that puzzle piece that was sitting right on top and it just didn't sink into place. And she would help us like click into place and it always felt good. So yeah, I like rewrites. I do. I like the editing and the rewrites.
Oh my gosh. They're hard. You know, when you get them back, there can be a lot and it can be very overwhelming. Well, and they paralyze some writers.
Well, she'll also say, good job here. I like this paragraph. I like this scene or something. So she gives you the pluses and the minuses. So and that's what you need. Mm-hmm. Well, we need. I don't know if anybody else does it. We need that to know that you're on the right track. You just need to tweak this.
Yeah. She's very supportive.
We all need those
yeah.
pluses and the attaboys and yeah. So what is your process then? So I know that you talked about you write it, you guys have a conversation. So is that chapter by chapter? Is it blocks? Is it chunks? How does that workflow? And then when does it go out? When it is all done between you two ladies, then it goes out to your dev editor?
So we talk about the overarching storyline that we want, and we try to set it as much as we can before I actually start writing the book in general. What was kind of fun is we figured out something that we wanted to do in book 2, and it actually carried over to book 3. And I remember I called her. I found something that would supply what we were looking for. She was on her way home from work. I called her, and she was like, okay, I'm pulling in the driveway. And she pulled in, like, ran in the house, and then started making dinner so I didn't have to stop, like, tweaking and like, really setting up the plot line, and we were discussing it while she made dinner. And that was really exciting because that, like I said, that carries over into book 3, and that was like that's a huge reveal at the end of book 2 that leads you into the 3rd book. So that was super exciting. But then as we go on, we kind of discuss like the points we have to hit in the chapters and in the plot line overall. Like, you know, she finds this out, and then she learns about this, and she meets this person, and blah, 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 and all the way down the line. So then I kind of get the freedom to kind of write how I need to get there, and she'll read it in chunks. Like the 3rd book, I had like 10 chapters written, but they just didn't feel like, they felt fine, but they just feel like they wasn't enough to like carry the story forward. And we were both stuck, so we actually reached out to the publisher, who was extremely supportive and helpful themselves. And the woman I spoke with, Erica, she was like, well, why don't you just, you know, here's a couple things you could do. And I came back and I was like, yes, we like this. This is what we're going to do. So I then went back and rewrote and like I had to add a new character in, and I overhauled the first 10 chapters, and I wouldn't let her read them. She knew what I was going to do, but I didn't want her to read half-written things because, you know, I was able to get like 1 through 5 with this new character, but I didn't sew them into the rest of the book. So she wouldn't have read the whole thing and been like, I don't understand.
Right. Yeah,
like, why did you have him do this? And but he's not in this chapter. I'm like, because I didn't get there yet. Like by doing that, it reduces the amount of middleman conversation and like a waste of our time and energy. Yeah. And so we try to streamline it. Like we're both, we're corporate people outside of our writing job. And there's this thing in the corporate world called Lean Six Sigma. And it's all about streamlining processes and making sure you reduce like inefficient things. And so that's why we write a certain way, because it keeps it efficient, it keeps it flowing. And I just finished the 12th chapter. I'm now writing fresh. I did all the rewrites and the overhauls and the characters added in, and he's making everything juicy and really better. And I was like, now you can go ahead and read it. And she read it, and she came back and she's like, I had a question here. This was a misspelled word. What's going on here? So that's really how we
Or
push
this phrase like
was clumsy or something.
I don't think people talk that way or something.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how we operate. So we do like check-ins as I write.
She'll start to write and say, okay, I'm up to here. I'm a little bit, what should I do? We want to get to this place. How do we do it? What do we do? What should these characters do? Or what should this person do or that person do? Because I had a question with the new character. And I was like, is he really going to do that? I remember asking you.
Probably.
Yeah.
We had a lot of conversations like that, so I'm not quite sure which one she's referring to, but yeah.
In the second book, the third book, excuse me. Yeah, the new character that we were told to put in, and I had some questions, and it was like, does he really kind of do that kind of thing? And she was like, yeah,
It has to happen.
it has to happen. And I'm like,
Unfortunately.
"Oh." And there was a reaction on how Bridget, as the main character, would react to this and what she would do. And I was like, would she do that? I mean, I don't know. Because again, I'm not 18 years old, so I have to rely on, what she feels.
I would like to point out we have teenagers in our life, and I do check in with them to make sure things are authentic to current teenage life.
Yeah, and I don't know if you can necessarily write a book. I live with 2 teenagers, and I could never put their language. And, it's all, not that it's bad of profanities, but, we say LOL for laughing out loud, and now you don't say that anymore. They're like, lol.
Ugh. I can't keep up. I'm at that point in my life where
I always ask her, what does this mean?
Yeah,
I don't know what this means.
Or a cap or no cap. And I'm like, there is no way you could write a book. Yeah, representing what the teens say, because you're like, what in the world does that even mean? It won't withstand the test of time.
I'll literally sometimes ask the teenagers, I'm like, can I see the text message you sent to your friends? Not because I want to know the conversation. I want to know physically how you're writing it. Are you still doing the letter U? Are you writing the word out? Are you just using emojis? Like, is it even emojis anymore? Is it something else?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions.
It's rough. So that's why we don't have her texting that often.
Well, Leslie, let me school you. You don't do emojis, okay? You're so old if you use emojis. And so naturally, mine are loaded up. But, when you say, oh, I know, or for real, you don't say all that out loud. It's FR. And I was like, what is FR? For real?
Well, I've done that.
Book. You can't even put that in a text message conversation in the book because no one's going to know what you're talking about.
It literally is a whole foreign language.
I always ask them. They texted. My granddaughter texted me. What did she say? I have no clue.
Like, I don't know. That's a Google question.
It's like I don't know what that means.
Yep. So I laugh because at the time I'm like, I am so old.
That's how I feel.
But I think it's marvelous that you guys can spitfire back and forth because as a writer, it can be very, very lonely. You don't always know if you're going in the right direction. And I know that you guys have a plot. It sounds like you have a beat sheet that you kind of try and stick to. But sometimes, in this myriad of decisions that you make scene to scene, or when your characters go rogue, you don't know if you're on track. And you think you are, and then you send it, when you send it to her, you're probably like, it really is helpful, right? Doesn't it make you guys better, richer writers?
Yeah.
Well, sure. You're right. It helps that we discuss the things. If I have a question or, on page 4, third line down from the top, what is she saying? I don't understand. or it doesn't seem right or something, and we'll discuss it.
But not even that.
We're pretty quick on that page number and that paragraph line.
She pulled it out of her. She did not have that lock and loaded, trust me. But
I've learned.
Yeah, because she used to be like, on page 52, you have a weird word here. I'm like, what line, what paragraph, who's saying it? Like, I can't just get random pages here. Like, I need to know details. Yeah, seriously.
So I've learned to give more.
But either which way, so with the example of the second book, Bridget has a new relationship. I'm not going to describe what kind it is, but it's a new relationship in her life, right? And so I had it charted out the way it needed. I was trying to keep it paced. I was really afraid it was rushing it, or I wasn't rushing it, because at some point, in the first book, the relationship felt rushed in the beginning. In the very first draft, it was very like turn around quick. And I remember my editor was like, no, you can't have that. So
slow it down.
She wanted it more paced. And so I noticed the relationship between Bridget in the first with the one person, and the Bridget in the second with her one person. And I made sure that second relationship was paced. And as I was going through it, and my mom was reading the chunks, she didn't read it from start to finish every single time. She picked up where she left off,
Sure.
like I was with writing. So I finished the book. I went through and edited some stuff, but when I was done, I was just like, your turn. And she read it, and I remember this comment, because it was the first time I heard this. She was like, oh, good job on that relationship. It was really paced. It was nice. There was a beautiful development of it. And I was like, oh, I did it. So it was nice to have that perspective from somebody. Yeah. And it was somebody who understood the characters and knew the characters, and it wasn't like, oh, no, they can't know because this is a spoiler. I have half of our friends have read it, and I'm like, well, I can tell you what happens in book 2. And they're like, no spoilers. I don't want to hear. So it was just nice I could get that from somebody who, needed to hear it and would be able to offer that information and that advice.
Well, how does that work, though, with you being traditionally published? Do you have to turn in your outline ahead of time and all parties agree?
No.
Or do you have latitude to write the story how you want?
We do. We have latitude. Working with Four Horsemen Publications is one of the best choices we ever made. They give us the creativity and the freedom that we want as an author, but they're also like, okay, you got a deadline, so make sure you hit that. And like, there are certain things that they would want, or they expect from their authors when it comes to formatting, let's say, or how something is printed. But what's nice about them is they're all authors themselves, so they understand what it's like. So, we're really as authors, we're being taken care of by authors who just happen to also be publishers. And so we have a lot of freeway and creativity that we would want to do.
Yeah, we didn't have to put in an outline of what the story's going to go.
No.
Right? No, this is a series. We gave them an overview mark, and they were like, okay, go.
Not even that. We didn't even have to give them the overview mark. They read the first book, the first chapters or whatever. They read the manuscript, and they were like, yeah, we like this. And half of them don't even know where it was going to go. They were just like, no, we like this. We want to publish this. And we were like, okay, cool. And then that was kind of just, off to the races from there. So it's been nace.
And you said that's Four Horsemen Publishing?
Four Horsemen Publications. Like the number 4. Yeah. 4 HP.
So do you, for those that are listening, did you guys have to query them?
Yes.
Did they approach you? How does that work? Because I know traditionally published, and there's a lot of people that don't want to be indie, and they do want to be traditionally published, but it is kind of daunting, the process.
It is and it isn't. This actually fell into my lap in a different way. So on Bookstagram, as we all are a great community, I'm sure you know, very supportive of each other. I made a friend, Maggie Paredes. She is also another author, but she wasn't at the time. She is now. But she had a friend who works for Bookie Call. I think she's the owner or the CEO. I know she's high level. Nicole. She's wonderful. And I actually went down to go visit Maggie just on a whim. And Nicole and I got into a conversation, and she said, have you heard of Four Horsemen? And I said, no. She goes, it sounds like your book would make a good home there. If you're going to submit it, let me know. I know one of the horsemen. I will send you, I'll let her know to look for you. Yeah. And I went, okay, great. So I came back. I discussed it with Mom. We had already been published with one publisher that we were not satisfied with. So we were looking for other people. But the problem is that we were already published with our first book. So we wanted to make sure that we could go to a publisher who was willing to take on a second printing of a book that was already published in the world, and not just self-published on KU.
The first book in the series was already published.
Yes. So technically, yes. So technically, Breed Reborn, that came out in February, it's our second printing of this book, but from our new publisher. So when I asked that of them, do you accept people who've already been published, like this series, because we could leave that first book as it is and just start with the second one with you. And they're like, no, we'll start from the top. So I was like, okay, great. So we submitted to them, and I let Nicole know, and then like I think it was a really quick turnaround, like maybe 5 days later, they came back and they were like, we're interested. Let's set up a meeting so we can see if this is a good fit. And there is like, I'm a person who follows my intuition and my gut a lot. And there was some kind of like warming, like, this is right, this is home, this is where our book belongs, this is where I belong, this is where she belongs.
We felt comfortable with the conversation we were having with the people.
And so we signed. We were like, let's make this happen.
We signed with them.
That's so exciting, but I feel like your journey is very different from a lot of people.
Probably.
I really feel like it was meant to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's how it felt with our editor, our developmental editor, Alexa. That's like, we saw her first. She was one of the 2 accounts that we saw for freelance editing. And I just looked at her website and went, she's the person for our book. My mom was like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, there's something I know about her that's like vibing with me. This is the person. And I was right. And, you know, I can't gush about her enough. I mean, she's in our thank yous in our book because she's so terrific.
It's wonderful.
And so that was the same feeling I had with the publisher. So,
and so
yeah.
She's not part of the publisher's team. She's independent.
No. So they don't actually. So Four Horsemen doesn't offer developmental editing because they know that a relationship with a developmental editor and an author is very special, and they didn't want to shoehorn that on anybody. So again, they're all authors. They understand these things that authors need. They're not, you know, like, you have to work with our team and that's it. So they do edit. They just don't do the developmental editing. Though I have noticed that after we go to Alexa and we send the book in, their editors might call out something like, hey, would a teenager still say this? I'm used to that question all the time. But they do call some things out. So if they have questions, they will speak up, which is also really nice, because now we don't have to just feel like they may have some kind of reservations, but they're not allowed to say anything. So there's always a very open conversation within the publishing altogether, especially with this publisher.
Well, my goodness, it sounds like you guys have a really well-supported team around you, dedicated to your success and your story.
Absolutely. We can't be any happier.
Yeah, they're very supportive. If we email them or anything, they come back within 24 hours with an answer.
They're communicative.
Every month or so, they have an authors, meeting with all the authors that are in their stable, I guess. I don't know what the word is. So we all get together and they have a theme and we discuss it so that you learn some new things.
They want to make sure that their authors are successful. So they do what they can to set us up for success. And if we have a question of like, I'm struggling with my newsletter, they will say, okay, here's how it helps. If you're still struggling, we'll set up a meeting, let's talk. And that's always really nice to hear. And because of that, they want to make sure that we have the most opportunities to sell our books. Because obviously, if we make money, they make money. It's one of those things. So it's nice to get that support. Wonder Twin Events is set up by 2 fellow authors from under Four Horsemen, and they're fantastic women. And so because of them, we've made other contacts within the Four Horsemen. So now we're becoming friendlier with a lot of the other authors under this publisher, which is nice. So now we have another community of people, and we're constantly shouting out people and celebrating people. I was actually texting one of the other authors today, Kate Disney Lugers, and her second book had come out in June, and I'm like, I'm ready. Let's get this stuff signed. Like, she's like, oh, I want you to sign my book, and I'm like, I'm gonna sell your book at GalaxyCon when I go next week, and it's like it's just nice that we have this support where we did not feel this with our last publisher. It was extremely frustrating and hard, and so I always recommend to anybody that if you really need to know what resonates with you when you're searching for a community that's supportive for you, of other authors, or if you're even just looking to go into like a traditional publisher, it's better to go with somebody who will offer what you need opposed to just jumping at the first chance who offers you a contract.
Yeah, I agree with that. To do a comparative analysis and do your due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, we had other offers from other companies, and they just didn't sit right. One of the companies that we went with, I mean, we were offered, I always tell people to check reviews and to really look into what people are saying. They come off really nice. I know somebody who is a friend of mine who was published by them. She had positive things to say, and I was like, okay, well, let me see what reviews say. And some of the reviews, some of the things were a little shady. And I said, no, I'm not taking chances. We already had a situation similar to this. We can't go this way. So
I've been there, done that.
Yeah, and Four Horsemen had like gold stars across the board, and we were like, yep, that's who we're going with. So
Are
and
they
we're happy.
fantasy only?
No, they are everything. They have nonfiction, there's fantasy, there's fiction, there's thriller, there's erotic, there's LGBTQ+ stories in there that could be paranormal romance. There's so much in this publisher that almost everybody could be satisfied with one of their books.
Yeah. How do they handle marketing? That's a huge challenge for all authors, both indie and traditional. And I think, everybody wants that marketing budget. Only a few select get it. So how does that work with a smaller press like them?
If we hustle, they hustle.
And they'll support us in what we want to do.
Yeah. So if I put something on any of my socials, they'll like it and they'll reshare it. They do author focuses once a week. They'll do like, okay, and the author of Feature Friday or Author Monday or whatever the day of the week it is. They will switch it up sometimes. They do like Tuesday tips, writing tips, and they ask all the authors for writing tips, and they promote that as well, and then all the socials that go with it. So they're really big about that. They'll promote. I mean, obviously we're promoted all together on their site. We're promoted on their socials. If there is an event coming up where it makes sense for us to be at, for example, we're located in New Jersey, and a bookstore in the Hamptons, there was somebody who said, oh, I have a bookstore who does Sunday signings and they want authors, and they forwarded it to everybody. They're like, anybody who's close enough, this is a great opportunity. This is what we'll offer to help you out. This is what we don't offer to help out. That's on you. And that's just nice to hear that there's even some kind of support, and they offered this opportunity to us, but we jumped at it. And now we have a book signing in the Hamptons on August 13th at Red Jacket Books.
Yeah. Congratulations. How exciting.
Yeah, it's extremely exciting. We have a lot coming up in the upcoming months, and it's all because of them.
It's nice that they get this information and then they pass it out to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Now, yes, of course, there's someplace else. I'm doing something in Texas, in Austin.
Oh, GalaxyCon. GalaxyCon is not related to Four Horsemen, but
No.
they do get but Wonder Twins, who are authors within Four Horsemen, they are a great company themselves because they offer this to the authors. You can be there if you want to. You don't have to be there. You can send their books and they'll sell it for you. Other people who go, like other authors like me, I'm going, and I'll sell other people's books. So it's a really great pop-up event, and we wouldn't have known about them if we didn't sign with Four Horsemen, most likely.
We wouldn't have found out.
No, not at all.
How wonderful. So that comes out, the second book comes out in October. Mm-hmm. What about the third? You're writing it, and do you have a release date? Do you have a deadline with them, or how is the third coming up? You said 12 chapters in.
Yeah. The third book is coming out a year from October, I think. I think that's the plan. Don't hold us to it. But we have a novella to go in between that. So that is coming out next year, early next year.
February, March.
Yeah, I think it's like late March.
Something like that. Yeah.
I don't remember the date yet.
Yeah.
So once we have those finalized dates, I can definitely announce them more, but it's not finalized just yet. I just know that they're both coming out next year. One's early and one's late.
So where does the novella, though, fit within the storyline? Is it a prequel?
No, it's right smack in the middle of book 2 and 3. There's actually a character from book 1 who goes through all books, who's not Bridget, who goes through all 3 books. He is largely missing for a first portion of book 2. when he shows up in book 2, you find out why he was missing, and the novella is from his perspective and the harrowing, traumatic thing that he went through, which is why he was delayed to getting to Bridget.
Oh, that's interesting. So have you started on that one yet?
There's an outline for that, but nothing has been written for it just yet. I want to get. We really need to get book 3 done.
It can be like a nice palate cleanser, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so I didn't know if when you're still like marinating or when you get stuck in a corner, you can kind of switch to his.
It's nice. Sometimes when I do feel a little stuck, I do kind of pop over to his novella, and I'm like, oh, that's right. And then like I might tap back to book 2, and I'll go through the chapters where he like talks about this, you know, just kind of alludes to it or whatever, and you know, so we're gonna hear exactly what happens to him, and it is something that lingers with him into book 3, and that's still a huge part of him because you know things happen to him that are pretty vicious. So it's not something you just brush under the rug quite so simply.
Ooh, sounds good though. It really does sound intriguing.
I'm glad. That's the point.
Suck you in to read all 3 books.
Right. So do you guys have ARC readers? Do you put those out in advance? Because honestly, you have excellent alpha with your dev editor. You kind of have a beta with your publisher. So do you do ARC reads? Do you send it out in advance? And I assume you don't do any alphas or betas because you guys are already covered in that area.
We don't have alpha. That's correct. We do have alphas and betas in that regard. ARC readers we did for the first book. I don't know what the plan is for book 2 just yet. We do have a little time before we know all the finite details on that. But the first ARC readers were just a lovely set of people. And we actually got to meet a couple, and it was just, they were lovely. I was happy to have them.
Oh, readers are the best, especially when they comment or they DM and they like your story, they get into the characters, when they act as though your characters are real to them. Oh my gosh, what a wonderful compliment.
It's so heartwarming. You feel validated as an author. You know, because
5 years doing this. Yay!
Yeah,
somebody likes it.
We all have imposter syndrome, so it's just so nice when someone's like, hey, you did good, and it resonates with me. You're just like, oh, yay, I don't suck. It's nice.
Yeah, it wasn't kind of a silly thing to do.
No, everybody battles with imposter syndrome, and I know that although there's room for all of us, there's room for all of us. And so you think like they have a lot of choices, and how is my work going to compete against that person's work? Or, you know, as writers, we're also readers. And so sometimes when you read some really good authors, you're like, what am I doing? I should stop.
Yeah, exactly. Especially if you read an author you truly admire, and they come out with one of the big 5 and they have all of that support underneath them. And even though we have this great support from our publisher that we're not going to trade for anybody, but at the same time, we're just like, are we not good enough for them? Our book's not that good? I mean, you can talk to any of my friends, especially my friend Val. She joins. Hi, Val. Val reads books. She just joined us, and I've gone to her multiple times and been like, Val, this sucks. And she's like, no, it doesn't. This is actually good. I'm like, no, Val, I suck. We shouldn't write. We should just give up on this. She's like, you stop it now. Like, she constantly like rechecks me and makes sure that I don't listen to the imposter syndrome that pops up.
Well, I mean, that's lovely. Again, she's like, oh, hey.
Oh, hey. I know her IRL.
Well, it's important, right? Sometimes we don't have the support around us. And it sounds like you guys do, not only within your own family, obviously, but also with your friends. And sometimes, you know, people are uninterested. They're not, and I find there's a lot of people that don't read. I feel like it's generally like women that read the most.
You know, on Bookstagram, I'm finding a lot more men are popping up now on my feed than I expected.
I love it.
Like, this is great. Come on in. Like, the water's great, you know? I know, we know what it's like to not have that support. So that's one of the reasons why it was really great that we had each other.
yeah, it made it comfortable to move forward.
So we like to offer that kind of support to other authors as well. Indie authors who are, struggling or they had questions. I get a lot of questions on Instagram like, hey, how does this sound? Or can you read a couple of my chapters? Or like, I got reviews, or, like, how do I navigate something like this? Or like, how are you doing it? I love to support, because I know what it's like to struggle as an author and to feel like you suck. Like you should just give up on your dream. Yeah. And that's a really harrowing feeling, and it sucks. It hurts so bad. So any which way we can support, we try. Mom will do it in like life with people, and I'll do it like more on the socials. She's a little too old for socials.
Nonsense. Martha Stewart is in her 80s and she's on social, but she probably
knows how to put music on her. Anyway.
I know what you mean. That's why I started this series, Let's Go Live, because there are so many wonderful people on and in Bookstagram. Not only authors, but also book bloggers and book reviewers. And so to me, I want to meet them. I want to be part of the community. I want to support you in your journey. And it's like you said, I find Bookstagram very inclusive. Every now and again, you get someone that goes rogue, but that's just life.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's take the good with the bad.
Par for the course when you're in a community like that. Somebody's going to be a little radicalized.
I know. And so that's why I enjoy meeting other authors, and if I can help them expand their platform or their reach, I mean, to me, that's what it's about, right? We're in service to each other, because we are not one of the top 5. We don't have their humongous budget. And when Dan Brown releases his book and he's on all the morning shows,
he right at this point.
He doesn't need to be on Let's Go Live on Thursdays.
Yeah, we all want to be on Good Morning America, but
yeah, right.
I know.
At some point.
My sister was talking about that, because although she doesn't read any of the stuff I write, because she's so incredibly busy, she was just like, but if you're ever on a morning show, I'll go with you. I was like,
with you.
Girl, you're going to have to be on it, because I'd end up vomiting.
you have to hold my head.
See, this is why I have my mom with me, right? She has me.
Yeah, y'all are each other's emotional support person.
Did you?
I literally have said that to people. If I'm going somewhere with my friends and I'm not supposed to be back there, whatever, or they're coming with me, I always joke, I'm like, that I'm her emotional support animal. Like, I have to go with her.
Yeah.
I've said that about her.
Well, and true, I have my development editor. She's going to be on here in a couple of weeks. She goes with some of her authors to the book events, because she said, logistically, you do need her there, because someone needs to talk while the author is signing all the books.
Well, if you're really challenged, you
multitask, sign and talk at the same time.
Yeah.
We've done that.
Good for you guys. Well, we're coming up on an hour, and I have a few rapid fire questions. If you guys can stay on a few more minutes and answer them.
We're game. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right.
Shoot.
Paperback or e-reader?
Both. Yeah.
Both, for sure.
Both. Plotting or pantsing?
Plotting and dancing. We're chaos in a bit way. We'll plot until it doesn't work, and then we pants.
Yeah.
Gotcha. First person or third person?
I'm sorry, I want to clarify. The way we read or the way we write?
Right.
Oh,
First person.
Yeah. It's a deeper experience. Plot-driven or character-driven?
Oh, plot.
Yeah. Plot for sure.
I love that. Ooh, plot.
Oh, yeah.
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 Okay, well, this one's kind of, I'll ask, but it's kind of both. Writing alone or writing with a partner or group?
I honestly like to write alone, and then I just check in with my partner.
Because I write
Partner?
differently than she does, so I can't write at the same time in this book because it's her voice.
Gotcha.
So
that makes sense. That's very fair. Outline or discovery writing? Kind of both. Y'all were talking about.
yeah, both.
Mm-hmm. Write in silence or write with music.
Silence. Oh, that's not true. It depends. Depends on the scene, because some scenes deserve silence, but then some need that music to kind of keep me inspired and or like get me in the mindset of what that scene's mood has to be.
Yeah, I think music definitely sets a mood.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, writing with a deadline or at your own pace.
Deadline.
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 Series or standalone? This is a series.
Yeah, series.
Yeah.
Well, in all fairness, all of our books are planned to be series, but Four Horsemen are a series. When it comes to fantasy, for sure, you definitely have to have a series. So we're gonna have series.
So Four Horsemen publications require series only.
I can't say that for all their books. I can't speak for all of that. I do know the fantasy books, especially what we're writing, they do have to be fantasy. I mean, they do have to be a series.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, everyone says the sales are in the series. If I say that fast. And it's true, but I know that, sometimes as authors, we just want to whip one little standalone out, kind of like your novella. It's tied. It's like a interconnected standalone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I know those are kind of fun also to do.
They probably are.
Yeah. Because one of their authors, there's novellas in between almost all her series books.
Yeah.
She writes a novella in between, and I'm just amazed she can just bust it out. But yeah.
That's not us.
Yeah, some of these writers are like, oh yeah, I can do 10,000 words a day.
I don't have time for that.
Well, no, we have full-time jobs.
Not even that. Like, I don't have the mental space to do that sometimes.
Oh,
Like, if I get 1,000 words, I'm like, that was a good day.
there's not enough coffee. You're right, because I feel like you have a natural ebb and flow to scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're writing, you have that same ebb and flow as to like when the creativity kind of like dries up, runs out.
Sometimes you have to step back and then let it just kind of sit for a minute and then go back to it. And the minute could last a week.
Minute could last, a year.
It could last however you need that minute.
Yeah, pretty
however
much.
long it is.
No, there's some truth to that, because then when you go back to your manuscript, you'll think that character wouldn't say that, or that doesn't make sense, or that's not their voice, or they wouldn't respond that way.
Mm-hmm.
So it really helps the plot be more glaring.
Yeah.
And things just jump out at you. You're like, that guy got that all wrong. I don't know what I was thinking.
That's because the mental space is cleared up. Like, now you have the freedom to notice that, if you're bogged down with stress and outside influences and things of that nature, you don't necessarily see those things. Sometimes it's like, I'm just putting it on paper so I can have something, and then I can go back and look at it. So I write better at night, because then I feel like all my day stuff, all my chores are done, work, making dinner, cleaning up, whatever. And then I can say like, oh, it's this time. I have the freedom to write. And I joke, because when I'm in a creative writing sprint, and we all know what that's like, sprinting, I will give up sleep, and so I'm way more tired because I'll write until like 1, 2 in the morning, and I'll like, there are times where like I force myself to stop, because I'm like, you still have a full-time job to get to tomorrow, and you don't work well on 4 hours of sleep. But my friends will say like, hey, do you want it? I'm like, no, don't talk to me until I tell you I can be talked to. And I like shut out everything, because I just want to like capture that moment, because I know what writer's block feels like, and I know how it's a problem when you feel stagnant for so long that you can't wait to like jump back into it.
Oh yeah, and for Val, if she's still on, she won't be offended when you block her out for a week.
She knows. She's a writer too.
Oh, that helps.
Yeah.
Okay. So last question, we kind of already answered this: historical setting, present day, or future?
Present.
Yes. Well, that's all I have. It has been lovely to get to know you guys, both Leslie and Janice. And I know that you're my first writing duo, so thank you so much. I'm so honored to have you on, and that you take the time to talk to me, and that we can learn about your writing journey, your writing craft, and everything about your team.
Well, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, and
this has been so much fun.
again after you release book 2 so we can help promote it.
Oh, I appreciate that. We love that.
Yes.
Yes.
Let us know when.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.